When it comes to fossil fuels, there is a dual aspect of environmental justice. It is often communities of color who bear the burden of pollution from the fossil fuel industry. These same communities may also face long-term risks from the industry in the form of climate change-induced disasters. A study in the U.S. found that communities of color, particularly Black, Hispanic, and Native American districts, are 50% more vulnerable to wildfire risks compared with other groups. This disparity is rooted in various forms of disadvantage, including inadequate funding for fire risk reduction, underfunded emergency services, and lower rates of private insurance. These problems extend far beyond the U.S. and are not limited to racial categories alone. Climate change exacerbates all forms of social disadvantage, further dividing people along lines of class, gender, age, and more. In India, the lower castes stand to lose the most from climate change. Globally, indigenous peoples and nomadic tribes are often more vulnerable. As Mulna points out, climate justice, social justice, and racial justice are all interconnected. For climate justice advocate Asad Rahman, who currently serves as the executive director of the poverty and justice nonprofit War on Want, the issue is systemic. He argues that in order to understand why climate diplomacy has failed to mitigate rising temperatures over the past 4 decades, one must examine racialized capitalism, how race is utilized to rationalize the exploitation and subjugation of people. Raymond maintains that although some exploitative practices may be in the past, the unjust structures they created continue to persist and influence present-day decision-making related to climate change. He states, ultimately, our economic system, driven by the pursuit of capital accumulation and profit, has sacrificed certain populations, primarily those in the global South. Hence, we must recognize the connection between slavery, colonialism, and racialized capitalism, as it lays the foundation for the climate crisis. Anthropologist Jason Hickel also highlights this colonial connection. Through his analysis of global inequality, Hickel has assessed the responsibility for climate change between the global North, including the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Israel, and Japan, and the global South, encompassing Latin America, Africa, and Asia. Our study calculates to what extent each nation has exceeded their fair share of the safe planetary boundary for CO2 emissions, he explains. The results are astounding. According to Hickel, the study reveals that the global North accounts for 92% of all excessively emitted CO2, while the global South is responsible for just 8%. The nations of the global North have effectively colonized the atmospheric commons. They have profited from this at the expense of devastating consequences for the rest of the world and all earthly life. These countries, having industrialized first, serve as the power base for fossil fuel corporations. As a result, they have the highest energy consumption and resource utilization, leading to larger carbon footprints. These countries predominantly consist of white populations. Conversely, the countries with the lowest emissions are primarily found in sub-Saharan Africa and South and East Asia, with Black and brown populations in the majority. Even when accounting for China's substantial recent emissions, white populations still hold a greater cumulative impact on the climate. Though race was not directly analyzed, Hickel acknowledges the presence of a racial disparity at play. Nonetheless, the study strongly emphasizes a clear colonial dimension, as the European colonial powers and settler colonies disproportionately contribute to excess emissions.